that we need to consider. Specifically looking at the financial management, I think you spoke about the NPV calculation, maybe within the context of VLN. I just want to understand something. If like I mention like specific figures like tax consideration, the capital outlay consideration without really looking at NPV calculation, am I in a wrong direction or?
No, you are not, but it just depends on what you are looking at there. Because if you just raise a capital outlay consideration for me, I could see it as a financing decision rather than as an investment decision. So in other words, are you telling me that they don't have this capital outlay required? Or are you telling me if we outlay this capital, we might not be able to recover it? Because those are two different points.
Okay, just looking at the VLNA where you have today, where consideration of new vehicles versus distressed vehicles. So
Yeah.
the consideration is that new fleet will probably cost you more. So compared to the distressed vehicles, so you may require more capital to actually to purchase those new fleet. So looking at the company's cash flow, considering that there has been a decline, like that kind of consideration in that context, in
Yeah,
terms
but
of
that's a financing one. So it's a valid one, but it's a financing one. It's still under financial management, but it's a financing consideration because it is not talking about whether it's a good idea, financially speaking. Will I make more money if I buy existing versus if I buy new? So you are just asking, do I have the money to do it though? But the question still remains, which one will make me more money? What if I buy a used one and it's now old, now more maintenance and all these things? It's not aligned with my own requirements. So that might require more training, that might require a different skill set. And therefore, for maintenance, I need to buy parts from somewhere else. So that could be an issue about buying existing distress issue. So the return analysis can differ to say, let me buy the ones that I normally use. I know them. I've got my maintenance team. They know them. I've got my operators. They know them. So that is the investment decision. Do you understand? There are two different points.
Yeah. I think from investment perspective, yes, the one that will be generating more money for the shareholders. I think attempting like this VLN because it requires the looking at the pros and cons of
Yes.
these two things. So yeah, those are some of the pointers, the old ones which requires like more maintenance but like the thinking, which I'm thinking now that maybe the other consideration could have been where you really want to consolidate like these two business decisions that needs to be made.
So yeah, so interesting. I'm glad you were there. So that's why I'm saying that there was nothing for you to prepare. It was just now that I've read this background, I've analyzed it. Now you are asking me this. Let me connect the dots, and that's what we're going to talk about now. When we talk about let's unpack this business acumen, because as I'm saying, after you've covered those strategy model. Throughout the year, I will not want you to be telling me that you wanted a trigger from me for any business acumen task. So my position is I'm not going to give you a trigger. That's where we're going to start. I'm not going to give you a trigger for any of my business acumen task. Why? Because I want you to see the entire document, provoking your business acumen. So I don't need to tell you more so that you are well prepared for my task. So that was what I wanted to highlight this morning, but we're going to talk about it when we get there. But you got me right there, that all these things you've just spoken, there was no extra preparation I want you to do.
Sorry, Ndani.
No.
So I did attempt, but I wasn't able to submit exactly at 1:15. It closed. But my question is, speaking to Helen right now,
Yes.
I just did a table of pros versus cons. Would it be good exam technique, and would I get more marks if I bucketed my answers into investing decisions, financing decisions, and things like that?
No, not one. Your academic head always wants us to correct. There are no marks now, remember, right?
Oh, yes, yes, you know what I mean.
Yeah, no. So he always wants us to correct that there are no marks now. That's number one. Number two, one of the things that, because this is a professional exam, I wanted you to say, but CFO, do you really need 2 slides? Can I not give you one slide where I just draw a column and I say, here is decision one and here is decision two? Because in some cases, when I'm talking about a pro for one, it could be a con for the other. So, CFO, can we just then summarize these 3 slides into 2 slides? For me, I will have said that you are now being that excellent professional. You are now thinking about how your CFO is thinking, how then decisions are going to be made, that there are people that will want to see things in a particular way. So I see that, CFO, you didn't even give me guidance, but I think this is the best way. And you are now suggesting something else. And it could be that, no, the CFO has not given you a structure, but what do you believe will enhance his discussion with his board? His board. Do you understand? So that in some cases, I could give you an HLA credit for it, because you have now taken an ordinary task and transformed it into an excellent task. So you have shown more than business acumen. Do you understand?
Yeah, makes sense.
Yes. So show up in that way. So the lack of clarity of a task, don't see it as an a frustration, as a hindrance, but think of it as an opportunity to be excellent.
Got it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Great. So now let's talk about, now let's just revert back to that point.
Hi,
Oh,
Rendani.
Ere, hi.
Yeah, before you move on, when you were
Yes.
answering Shipiwa now, you said that um they had said 3 slides, right? And
Yeah.
then you are deciding now to say I'll give them 2 slides.
No. As a suggestion,
Yeah,
don't
I'm
change
I'm
it.
also I'm going with your suggestion. I just
Yes,
want to know if I
yes,
am saying
yeah.
now I'm giving you 2 slides. Do I need
Yeah.
to explain to them that I feel that I can give you this in 2 slides? Because if I don't do 3 slides, it means I didn't follow the instruction that I was given.
100%. I like the last part, that you are going to do 3 slides, but you might then suggest something else.
Okay, all right.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
And it's a very important part. I'm sure you're going to see it. It's one of the 9 competencies that, number one, answer the task. So answer the task. The task wants 1, 2, 3 things. So you cannot say that other considerations I didn't give you in a separate slide. I might struggle. I might put you on a BC because I was clear about what I want. But now, if you now make some suggestions, I'm thinking that, oh, but that's brilliant. Maybe let me quickly do this table before my meeting with the board. I can do it myself, or I can just send it to you that, yes, please, can you do it for me? But you have highlighted those things in a way that it can enhance someone's conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So now the point that I've raised, to say that I'm not going to give you a trigger. At face value, one could think, but is that fair? Is that the expectation that I need to hold even when I go to Psycha, I can? Why don't you give me a trigger? Then the idea is that when we talk about business acumen, primarily, especially when you link it with strategy, it is that we are going to be dealing with decisions. So business acumen, the reason you need to have it, and I like the fact that you are in different roles, you've got different exposure and so on. But you need to appreciate that the bottom line is that management are faced with decisions on a daily, weekly, monthly basis in order to drive the organization forward, in order to ensure that value is created. So when you were busy reading the background, you could have started seeing some of the business decisions that this management team will need to deal with. The one that specifically we then followed through on was that they've expressed that they want to pursue growth in Durban and in Cape Town. That was one of their decisions. So what I therefore want you to always be doing is to then start thinking externally and saying, what's there in Durban? What's there in, what do you call it, in Cape Town? What even drove such a successful business in Gauteng that can be replicated in the other provinces? That is what I need you to always be on that mode. We have confidence in SA. Why? What does confidence mean from a decision-making perspective? These are the strategies that we want to pursue. Why this particular strategy? How do they contribute to further revenue generation? How do they contribute to effective cost management? How do they contribute to value creation? So always be curious. Always bring your critical thinking. And that is when now commercial business awareness then comes in. So essentially, the bottom line is that it does not exist in isolation. There will generally be a business decision to be made. It gets a little bit complex when we are making that decision in a context of a pure technical task like accounting. And you might be thinking about, but wait, how can someone link accounting and business acumen? Think about standards like IFRS 13. IFRS 13, it says that it's a fair value measurement standard. And when you read, it refers to the fact that it's a market-based measurement standard. So what does that mean? One of the principles is that it says that an asset should be measured at its highest and best use. Okay, now where is business acumen featuring there? Then when you read that, it says an asset's best and highest use, it is dependent on what other market participants will do with that asset. So now your business acumen then comes in and say what can be observed as the uses of this particular asset. Who is even a market participant? Because a market participant could be another business. Then it also then says that in evaluating the asset's highest and best use, we consider whether it's physically possible to change the asset, whether it is legally permissible to do this. But you then say, but again, I know that when I look at my strategy model, there is what we call PESTEL. And PESTEL then talks about the legality of the factors that I need to consider in making a decision. So Bevan was just telling us right now that there is then a trend that he has been observing where because of the high vacancy rate, then existing buildings are being converted into this. But do you understand that that fair value measurement requires one to first look outside and understand the trends and understand also the fair value principle to say, if I convert though, will I make more money? Then consideration of, yes, there is a trend. So one of the other triggers of fair value measurement is it financially feasible? So Bevan, if he was given that fair value measurement task, he could then demonstrate his business acumen there and say what? And say that, yes, there is a trend that is evidencing that people want to now live in the cities, but there is a decline in working from the office. Brilliant point. That for me could motivate financially feasible. Then you will say that, yes, there are other buildings in Cape Town that have been doing it. We have seen the likes of Airbnb booming. Then that talks about it's legally possible. But now do you see, you are in accounting. You are applying a set of technical principles and you are using your business acumen to respond to that. So that's why this bubble comes in here to the point that I'm raising to say, don't think about the enabling competencies in isolation, because for them to exist, they exist in a context. And in this bubble right here, we can see them bringing in or marrying into technical competencies. So I will not want you to get here and think that this is an abstract concept, but I want you to think about how, if this is an integrated thinking lesson, how do I marry it and be ready to demonstrate it? And one of the things that you will see whether you are moving, progressing positively is now how you read these documents. And now I'm saying that you have read it. But when you go back, you might start saying that, oh, I was not thinking about it this way. Now, when I'm reading it, I'm seeing other points that did not exist. And now that is how that process works, and it is improved over time. But always come back here and say, whatever enabling competency we are going to talk about, it does not exist in vacuum. It is connected to something. Then now we go to say that, but wait, this business acumen, if we go back to the authors of this particular assessment and say, what do you want from these newly qualified chartered accountants? What do you want to go tell prospective employers? What do you want to tell the world about it? Then this is what they said. So this is copy and paste from the new CA of the Future Competency Framework. So they're saying the CA that they're looking to create through the process of a professional program and through the process of an entry exam like the APC, it is this. So they go tell their businesses and say, these CAs, they are good with making decisions. Then employers want more. Then they are saying that they are able to unlock and demonstrate these three things. What are they? One, they're able to use their understanding of a business internal operations to do what? Because we spoke earlier about understand the background, but why do you want me to understand the background? So that you can make quick, correct, and or focused strategic decisions and make good judgments in a business or a business division. Copy and paste from the CA of the Future Competency Framework. This is what they define as business acumen. And that's why I'm saying that we could have started with a different understanding. But therefore, we need to align to say, but when you are a CA and people are asking you these things or you are demonstrating these things, or employers are now looking at you. What is it that they want? Then number two, it is that you understand the context, external environment, and you are able to copy and paste, make quick, correct, and focused strategic decisions, and good judgments in a business or business division. Did you see now what we are talking about? And now you might be saying that, but which external or internal? And that's where the strategy models come in. So it's not like they've left you orphaned in the context of an academic perspective. And that's what I always love about this, that they will tell you what they want from you, but they will give you the keys to deliver what they want from you. And that's the point of a program. We want you to confidently deliver these things as a professional and in the APC. All right, so you are saying that I cannot demonstrate business acumen if I don't understand an entity's internal and external environment. Exactly. Oh, but you are saying that an understanding is not enough. I need to be able to link that understanding with the decisions that the entity is facing even more better. Because if we leave it and say that business acumen is understanding the internal and external, we've missed the mark. The mark needs to complete when we say, so that we can make quick. I don't like the word correct, because decisions, I don't feel they are correct. They are just decisions. They can, in hindsight, be considered to be great decision, but it does not make them correct. So yeah, I don't like that, but let's take it as it is. That's them. So quick and focused strategic decision and good judgments. Are you able to make good judgments when you are faced with a request from a CFO saying, what should I do in preparation to my meeting with my board? That's what the CFO is asking. So demonstrate that business acumen. Then to the point that Chipiwa and Ere were saying earlier, it becomes to the third box. Because now in business, and this is why I love having such a diverse class, because it helps me to learn as well. Because we are now saying that the third component, which is generally difficult to assess in a case study mode, and there will be one indicator that is weird, and we'll always have it to say, and other factors, and other strategic decisions, because we want to be open to your insights. We will then have a point to say, this indicator is a candidate that demonstrates a higher level application by challenging 1, 2, 3. Because for me, for instance, the CFO seems to have been very constrained in a thinking. Should we buy or should we lease? Or should we buy new or should we buy distressed? Then why didn't you tell her, why don't you lease for 2 years? Because this is a 2-year contract. Or do you need to buy? Do you need to buy? Or why don't you bring some of the assets with low utilization from Joburg to Durban? That is block number 3. Do you see that it's a showing off block there, block number 3? You are showing off that once I have understood this business, I can come up with the things that are not specifically given to me. Because either I've done more research or I've now come to understand these things, and that will always be made provision for it. And generally, you'll see it under HLA, because we are saying we want to hear how different candidates think about things. So it will not necessarily be the primary issue. What do I mean? That don't come and list other strategies and start discussing them over a page and so on. That will not be a good approach. But it is just to really present that I see you said you wanted 5. I see that you said you wanted to think about this. I see X and Y, but I'm able to develop new concepts, innovative ways, new ideas to promoting a business success, widespread use, using a questioning or inquisitive mindset. Because imagine what the CFO will do when they start getting that email and say, oh, but yes, why do we need to buy? So that's the kind of thinking. And when you see other consideration, then be present for it and really show up. Hey, and that's it. So do we understand what Saika wants from you? Maybe let me pause here. Do you understand that this is what they want from you? And every case study, so without an exception, we are going to give you a high-level industry overview. There will be things that are intentionally incomplete. So I'm saying that the idea is not to do extensive research, right? But be mindful that there will be things that are intentionally incomplete to just provoke your inquisitive mind, your questioning mind, so that you can browse a competitor report, so that you can browse the internet. There will be things that are just not making sense because the case study is an industry that you have never carefully sat down and consider. That is not on your work every week. So then be mindful and ready to demonstrate an inquisitive mind. But as I'm saying, there will never be a case study that you need to pass by doing, or you need to demonstrate competence by doing majority of the work outside it. So let's be clear about that. So I don't want to hear that I spent the entire Friday on document one, going through listed companies. It was a struggle. I had to go to the New York Stock Exchange, and so you will have missed the mark. I want you to say that I spent majority of Friday analyzing and making sense of this so that I can have an intimate understanding of the internal, external, and demonstrate an inquisitive mind. Agnes, let's go, please.
Good morning, colleagues, and good morning, Rendani. Yes, Rendani, I just want to say what I found from the task that you gave us.
Yes.
That it challenged me to wear different hats. One time I'm for it, the other moment I'm against it.
Good.
I'm for acquiring the assets. Now I'm against the acquiring it. I'm for the, I found myself juggling in like going there, write 2 points there, I go back, and then considering other key considerations. So I hear you when you say that you really have to be present and show up and present yourself. Yeah, I hope I'll get there. But it was really a good task.
All right, great. And I love what you've just said now, and I would like to highlight, I'm sure, one of the points that Fedi said, that remember, you are being positioned as an entry-level chartered accountant. And we intentionally left that point to say, since you will not be part of these discussions, to remind you of your role, because you might be saying that this point I'm going to do to put, I know in the meeting I'm going to defend it, but you are not even going to be in the meeting. So you are now trusting your CFO to go present it. So you now need to empower your CFO. So clarity becomes one of the enabling competencies. You need to enable your CFO to be, by being clear that this issue, there is a gray area, and you are probably going to further debate it with the board, but let me empower you to just say what you are trying to say here. So that is another thing I want you to keep in mind. You are never going to defend your point. You are an entry-level chartered accountant. The most you're going to defend it against is your CFO. They might pick up a call after you submit and say, oh, Agnes, I see that you are saying this. Yeah, no, I was taken aback. Can you please unpack it further for me? They could do that, but you are not going to be part of the meeting. So clarity, and also not being on a particular thing, because she said, what are the pros and cons? So don't make a call, but you can say, in making the call, you and your board might need to think about 1, 2, 3. Then she's saying, no, that's fair. I think I'm going to just focus on these 3 things because I know my board. That's now a strategic prerogative. Right, Helen?
Okay, no, thank you, Randani. Just to go back to HC, especially on the other factors. So I just want to understand, like, under like exam condition. I think sometimes they say you've got these 2 options. Purchase a new fleet or distressed fleet, and then you're against all these options. So you're finding yourself like so excited because you want to actually justify like whatever option you think is the best alternative course of action. Where do you stop? Like, is it 2 points that will land you into the HC, or like in terms of coverage, where would you say, okay, now I can stop here? Because I think sometimes when you really want to emphasize, you want to motivate, you can actually get carried away.
100%. I completely agree with that. And I was hoping that that question will come. Because you might have thought that, oh, sure, you essentially want about, if you are being as minimum as possible, you want on every slide 1 con, 1 pro. Next slide, 1 con, 1 pro. The other slide, at least 1 consideration. You could say that at the end, this task needed me to show up for 5 things at the end. But do you think, picturing my CFO, will she be impressed, or she'll think I'm just being lazy by just writing 1 point on each and every task? So here, that's really one of the tough decisions you need to make consistently. When will I have hit the mark? When will I have impressed my senior management? And how do I do that, practically speaking? So I don't have an answer to that, but I can tell you on a case by case, the kind of expectations. So like for this particular one, I was expecting 2 pros, 2 cons for decision 1, 2 pros, 2 cons for decision 2, and only 2 other consideration. So if you had given me that, then I was going to put you at a C. And here I'm talking about, you have now answered the task by giving me pros and cons. And you have now answered it sufficiently such that I've got at least 2 things to talk about to the board. So that is what I would have considered to be a C here. So one could say, but yeah, so it's too, not too much. That's the debate that we can have. That is the debate that we can have, where now we can say that, all right, can we not say that since the task wanted 5 things, then I should be given credit for having that 5? That's fair. Then if I give you 2 and I mess up 1, that this one, you know, I've missed the mark, and you're only willing to give me credit for it, and for just 1 of the point, will that not make me at least get through? That we can always debate. So those are the kind of things, and the process we then go through and say that, yeah, what will be appropriate? And it's always a back and forth. One could say at least 1 across 5, that's a good one. And I'll say, oh, that's fair. Or one could say that but other consideration, and it will be an empty slide if it's just 2 points. So maybe they do 3 and we give them if they've got only 1. So those are then the other consideration. But you could say, I know my boss. If I give just 2 points, she'll be telling me that I didn't apply my mind. How can I do that? So do you see that the measure of competence, it's got somewhat of process of judgment that goes into it. And one of the things that the 9 competency framework comes in, it's when now we then say that, but wait, without now thinking about the number, let's now look at the 9 competency framework. How should we think about a competent response? All right. So now we move away from just 1, 2, 3. Now we are saying that a candidate that answers the task, 1, this candidate has slides and speaker notes. That is in. 2, that candidate has now provided pros and cons for decision 1 and pros and cons for decision 2 and has a consideration that is in. Brilliant. So that candidate met trigger number 1. Then we are saying that candidate should show us some business acumen. In your points across, regardless whether they were pros or cons or other consideration, did you demonstrate an indication of understanding the entity's business, internal business, or they have one consideration that talks to financing decision as Helen was giving us? Brilliant. And they have another that is talking to Bevan as a market consideration. Brilliant. So if from a business acumen, they gave us a demonstration of understanding the background by giving me internal and external consideration, I'm in for them. I'm going to give them competency number 2, business acumen. Then number 3, did they interrogate these decisions in a mindful manner? That they even told me that if each cost 1 to 20 million, at a minimum, we are looking at an investment of an 8 million, and at a maximum, we are looking at an investment of what? Of 160 million. Now that candidate is thinking critically. Then do you see, then now we are moving away with the numbers. We are now looking at a competence framework that we need to say a candidate that responds in this way, regardless of the number of points, as long as they are ticking business acumen, ticking a good response, ticking critical thinking, this candidate will impress their CFO. So do you see how one can look at it? Where we can land could be very different from one's expectation. But that's the other thing about the APC, that it has that uncertainty. Whereas if it was an ITC or IAC, I would then say, I want this question to be out of 10. And I'm not going to restrict the candidates. So candidates that give me 5 consideration that are valid, then even if they got 0 for the other part, even if they didn't attempt, then I'm going to give them 5 out of 10. That's 50%. They've passed. That's ITC thinking. Because I wanted 10 and halfway to it is 5. I don't care whether you missed the other parts or not. You've passed. But here in the APC, I'm looking for a demonstration of professional competence. So that is the key consideration on how we land on whether your answer is good or bad. Make sense?
Yes, thanks.
Sure. All right, Linda, I see your hand is up.
Yes, Rendani. So I'm wondering whether should the time for a task actually be sort of a guidance In number one, I would think, yeah, it's important the coverage of all competencies to be demonstrated. But now I'm thinking if you're giving me about 1 hour for 10, you are generous with your time if you're looking for 10 points. But I would think if I'm stretching to 15 for that time, like using the previous guidance, for instance, I would say maybe you're giving me, what do I say? Because it's not marks now, it's points. Maybe you're giving me about, let's just try to calculate, because you've got 60 minutes, and then if you're looking for 10 points, you are giving me six minutes per point. And then where I'm looking at 60 hours divided by 15, I would say you are giving me 4 minutes per point. Would it be something that can assist me to say how much time per point am I given? Plus, I should actually cover all the competencies that are applicable in that scenario.
Great question. So now to further introduce the other element about the APC. So you get them, you find 7 tasks, and it is up to you to decide how much time you give. So in my case, I gave you 1 hour. Why? Because one, it's 8 o'clock in the morning, you didn't know about it. So adjust. I had given you a 10 minutes shock, like I'm surprised what Rendani is doing, but then have 50 minutes to then answer it, right? Then 2, we are at the foundation level. So in the foundation level, there's a little bit more guidance because we want you to ease into the program. We want you to understand these things and not necessarily focus on being right or wrong, but we want there to be the transformational journey. When now you're saying that it's not like you are teaching me things that I could not have done, but now you are easing me into what you expect from me. Does that make sense? And that's why when you are talking to me now, I'm liking how you were thinking about it, but it will be a matter of, are we gravitating towards the same expectation? And that's the point of the foundation. It is supposed to craft that kind of thinking to say, you are coming from a work experience, you are coming from a CIMA experience, you are coming from a traditional route, thinking about this way, and so on and so on. But now, how do we work together in the foundation and give you the leeway to be expressive of your thinking, but also be mindful of the expectation we have from you? So that's that part. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm sure we'll grasp it along the journey to be able to have that professional judgment of how much you should put in.
100%. And I remember someone that was in the CIMA journey, that we journeyed from the ITC journey with it. She didn't like it. She felt it was a little bit overwhelming. Then we're excited about the APC. She then joined. And shame, I think I used to frustrate her because of the feedback I used to give her. Like she will write so much, be focusing on the third block, when now she's giving me great idea. And I will then highlight half of a page and I'll say C1. And she was like, but Rendani, I wrote so much and I thought these were brilliant points. You are saying that's 1 credit. I was like, yes, unfortunately. She was like, but from CIMA, this is now at the meat. Like I'm showing what is expected. If I'm to write a memo at work, I need to show this to my executive. I was like, I hear you, but you are an entry-level chartered accountant and there's a task before you. So it took time, but she eventually got it. But if you are frustrated, always take that step back and just think about where we are trying to go. If we think that we're going to have this session and now it's done, then we will probably say we don't need a foundation. But the foundation, as I'm saying, you've got the luxury of time, and you've got the luxury of the pace at which we are running the program. So allow yourself to engage, allow yourself to check in, allow yourself to grow through the process. And that's how, for me, you'll get the best value from it. Tsungi.
Hi, Danny. So I think just on the time element, I think
Yes.
just to probably highlight a few things. I think the difference with the task now, as you put it, is it's not about just stating to say you've got 7 tasks and so I've got 7 hours, so I'll divide, because already there's an element of then transitioning from the information that I had in the pre-release, which, like you're telling me about NPV, but for all I know, in the task it then talks about IRR, or payback period, and then I have to align and replan and still be able to deliver within a given set of time. So it's not so much about do I give the points on IR on NPV as seen in the pre-release, because I could then create my own task and give you points that are not necessary for the question at hand. So I think it's something that we then probably, you will need to help us to say, how do I then transition? Because an hour seems a lot when you ask me about NPV, because I've got the pros, the cons, and the recommendations. But in this case, you are not looking for the points. You're looking for probably the integrated thinking approach to say, now that you have said we're talking about NPV as a decision-making tool, how is it applicable to VLA given this scenario, which I'm not yet aware of?
Yeah. And to further overlay that the NPV or any other technique like a payback period, it will be 1 point. When now I'm just saying that as much as this looks like a narrative task, I want you to realize that when we assess suitability of proposal, someone around the table will say, I want to see the numbers. I hear you, Linda, I hear you, Tsungi, but at the end of the day, I like this idea, but I want to see the numbers. And I'm sure you know those people even in the organization, that if we don't have the number, this guy, we're just wasting our time. This guy, after we have told our story, after he's been impressed, he won't sign the memo unless we show him the numbers. So this was just for you to be mindful of that if the board is to deliberate, the board cannot be going to the market and say, we were not aware about what this will cost or whether it will create shareholder value. Will you not think that's a reckless board? So that's why I'm saying it's financial analysis or evaluation. In one way or the other, even if you are just saying, we need to assess which option will be more profitable, that's enough for me. You have brought financial evaluation. You don't need to name it and say NPV and so on. If you say NPV, it's just, I'm more impressed. But I'm just saying that someone will want to know about the numbers, and a responsible board for me will need to have seen the number here. There was an article I was recently reading. It was criticizing some board. Or Steinhoff. Yes. If you read Steinhoff articles, the recent articles that were released in December, I don't know whether they were saying that now they've got the investigation report or they are saying they're waiting for it, but just Google those articles around December. Very well written, but I think the person had seen some of the report from PwC. She then said there were instances where the board approved financial transaction without a detailed financial analysis presented to them. And I was like, interesting point. Like, what was this board doing? Like, how were they not asking for these things? So it's a very interesting article. I want you to just read it, because it just enhances one's understanding of the engagements at a board level, or the lapses in judgment that board did actually do once they've once they've become familiar with executives. Then the other point that they criticize, they say that they could not locate a due diligence report that was done when Christoviso exchanged his shares in Pepco and got the stain of shares. Because if such a report was done, maybe these things would have been revealed there. But because he was a chairman or a significant person in both, and he had seen the numbers for years, just like, guys, let's do it. Let's do the swap. And I was like, but these things that we keep talking about here, and we talk about their relevance and criticality, if they are missed, it really gets to show that it comes at a significant cost. We saw the Heineken transaction after it was acquired. How much did they write off? Was it 8 billion or 5 billion in a space of 6 months? I was like, but how are this? Was there a CA? That's what my question is always. I don't know about you. I always wonder if there was a CA, and I hope this CA doesn't come out and undo all this work we are doing here, and to say that none of this thing no one does in public, in practice. But it's always that for me, to say, how are we looking at the world? Are we really being honest with all these factors? So do Google those articles, but very insightful in terms of how business acumen and critical thinking is applied, and what one will wonder in terms of where the lapse of judgment really came in. But Saika is saying to us, if you are able to obtain an understanding of the internal and the external, you should be in a well-placed position to make quick and correct decision. All right, Tim, if you can maybe doing your recording here, so to make it easier, if you can stop and doing your recording.